for those who don't know, I'm Aaron Schwartz, one of the founders of Arita. We build AI segments for, I don't know, a couple hundred brands at this point, Spanx, Caraway. I should come up with new names every time. Salt and Stone. And I'm just like so many cool companies. Feel very fortunate. Um, Today we are not talking about Arita. If anybody's curious, I'm around. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. But we are talking to Howie. And Howie, I want to get out of the way. Have you give a proper intro to yourself, very much your background, like, because a lot of that obviously influences how you build and how you built the company. But yeah, give us your story, and I'll come in with a bunch of questions.
Sure. All right. Let's see how far. As an old guy, you have a big background, right? So I went to school at University of Michigan. Go blue. Don't do it. Don't you do it. And I did a couple of things out of college. I actually started a company, raised money back in the day. We never even talked about that, but it was pretty cool. We'll talk about that another time. But when we unwound the company, I realized the only people making money at that point were the lawyers. So I decided to go to law school. And my first semester of law school, I started in January instead of September. I met this guy, this big guy, comes up to me my first week of law school. Is like, "Hey, you want to go to lunch?" I'm like, "Sure." Turns out he was an NFL player, had just finished his third year in the league, first round draft pick. And we became really good friends that semester. And he called me up after the semester and said, "Hey, you want to do my next contract?" And so I became a sports agent during law school. And, a part of that, part of like what makes that somewhat interesting and actionable, frankly, is I mentioned to him, I would like to be a sports agent. I didn't even know what that meant back then. This was in a long time ago. And so, I represented players for like 10 years. I did Under Armour's first ever licensing agreement. Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, got my name from somebody, called me up and he's like, "Hey, you don't know us. We're a small company, but I made this cooler t-shirt that athletes are using, et cetera." So Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour, played football at Maryland, and he was sick of changing the t-shirt, which would get so sweaty, and created the Under Armour t-shirt. They were doing a licensing deal with the NFL for NFL Europe, which was a thing back then. And I did that deal with Kevin Plank, and my business sort of evolved. I had a marketing side to my company for the agency. I was representing NFL players in their contract negotiations. And it morphed into also doing deals like that and representing on-air broadcasters and producers and production companies. And one of my clients was a company that produced the World Series of Poker for ESPN. So I was negotiating all the deals with them. I had a really cool and interesting path during that time. One of my football players was a little known NFL player who was like up and down from the practice squad named Bill Goldberg. And I helped him get into wrestling and it became like the biggest thing in professional wrestling. Anyway, did that for quite a while. And, I'd always been a creative at heart and I would always come up with ideas. And my college friends used to call me the idea man. But I didn't know what to do with them. Like back then, it was like there's no internet. It was not so easy to figure out how to get a product to market, how to find a manufacturer.
Also, to be fair, like the bar at Michigan is extremely low to be an ideas person. So,
Fair.
okay.
Yeah, my
Right.
friends are idiots. Yeah, it
All
is
right.
a fair point. Said like such an Ivy leaguer.
I mean, come on. And this, I wear my Ohio State hat in this
Yeah.
call.
Ooh. So anyway, I ended up figuring out how to get a couple of products to market by creating them, getting them to a certain point, and then licensing them. I never wanted to make anything. I would license it out to other companies that were already in the space, like leaders in that category, and I would just take royalties. That was awesome, right? I came up with a pillow for a travel pillow that you could use on your hand. It could be a regular pillow, but you could put it on your hand and you could sleep like this, like that. We sold at Hudson News around the world. So super cool, right? And I read this book after licensing a couple of products. I was in Barnes Noble. I see this book and I'm like, oh, this looks cool. So I read it and I write to the guy. It was about licensing products. And I write to the guy. I'm like, this is crazy. I licensed two products using your system without knowing it. And so that guy writes me back and we become friends. And I end up, he had a coaching program, and I ended up being one of their coaches and coaching other inventors and product developers on how to get your product to market. Okay. That brings us to I had this stupid idea to do a cooler robe for guys, right? I'm like, okay, I can't license this, but you know what? I'm coaching other inventors and product developers on how to get their product to market. I should probably learn how to do a Kickstarter. This can be a good Kickstarter in my head. This is what I'm saying. I'm like, you know what? This thing could do $1 million or it could do like $0 other than my friends and maybe my mother and your mother, since,
What year was this in the Kickstarter? When you
the Kickstarter launched in 17. So
Okay,
I launched it in June of 2017. Like,
cool.
let's call it June 1 of 2017.
Like,
And, like, it's not like I was young. This was, what is that, 9 years ago? So it was 8.5 years ago. No, just about 9 years ago. I was a 50 plus year old guy. My friends, I'd be like, you guys know what Kickstarter is? They're like, yeah, of course. I'm like, do you know how it works? They're like, yeah, yeah, we get a percentage of your company, or it's like charity. I'm like, no, no, no. You're just giving, you're just getting, putting it
mhm,
basically like a down payment on a product, right? You're pre-ordering so I could go and see if there's demand and go to a factory with an order in hand, which I think it was super valuable for that. But, again, back to what I said with my first client, putting things out into the world um, is so important. I think it gives it energy and power and whatever. And so I'm like, all right, let's see what happens. So I launched the Kickstarter, and literally 1 week into the Kickstarter, I get a direct message on Twitter. I'm the head of casting of Shark Tank. I love this. Can we talk? And I'm like, all right, this is not real. Like, she's not really the head of casting. People say they're the head of casting when they're just one of a casting agent and they're in multiple agencies. And turns out she was the head of casting of Shark Tank. I remember my daughter was it was an award ceremony for my daughter at her high school. And see this text, and I'm like, someone's messing with me. And it turns out it was Shark Tank reached out 1 week into the launch of the company because they saw it on Kickstarter. And, if you don't put things into the universe, you're never going to make something happen. So she's like, I spoke to her. She's like, I love the product. I love your story. Like, I need to get you, to in front of producers. So went through the process, but like literally 3 weeks after launching, I'm pitching the Sharks. I got selected. I had to go through the whole process, and it's a crazy process. Like,
mhm.
it is very difficult to get on that show. It's like a half of a percent or something. So I looked at it, I'm like, it's like 20 times harder than getting it to Harvard. But it was, people were saying to me, oh, you sure you should go on? You don't even have the product made yet. And I'm like, look, who knows what's going to happen? Like, either my company may not succeed, Shark Tank may not still be, of course, it's still going now, but who knew that?
Mm.
And so I went on and anyway, that's how I got to where we are. That's the background.
It's nuts. I love I mean, your background is so fascinating. You went on to Shark Tank. Obviously, the business has been successful. Do you think your legal background or your licensing background or the fact that had done a lot of deals gave them confidence, or was there doubt because you kind of been running your own business, but was there a belief in you as an operator of a business, or what were some of the doubts at the time? If you
Oh,
can reflect
me
back
or others?
of you.
By me, my doubts.
You Oh, yeah, sure, I'd love to hear what your doubts were. I
Well, my
assume you were
doubt
at this.
I'm a big, like, let's see if it sticks type of thing, right? Like,
Right.
give it energy, see what happens. I will say this. Here's how I looked at the success of the Kickstarter. Forget Shark Tank for a second. When I launched it, I said, if I do $100,000 or more, this is a business.
Mm,
If I do $25,000 or less, there's no business. And of course, well, actually, I said $50,000 or less. I have no business. 50 to 100 was a gray area. We did 80. So I was in the gray area. Shark Tank, by getting on Shark Tank and Shark Tank reaching out to me, because I never would have reached out to them at
mm,
that point. We were way too early. I felt almost like bullied into starting a company because if I'm going to be on Shark Tank, why wouldn't I
mm.
see where it goes? So that's what I did. And the crazy thing is, I shared the journey with all my people, my social media. I have a lot of friends and contacts or whatever. And here's what I'll tell you. I didn't have a website because I didn't have a product yet. My product got in right when I found out I was going to air on Shark Tank, and they tell you or film Shark Tank. They give you 2 weeks notice that you're going to air, right? And so I was told right at Christmas of 2017, aired January 14th of 2018. Let's say I think we aired at 8 o'clock. My website was ready at 7:30. It was like of that day. Like I didn't have a website. Why would I have a website? I didn't have any product yet. And so we did get product in right before we aired, which was fortunate.
Did you stop? Oh, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
I was curious, did you stop doing all the other, like, activities you were doing and just at that
Did
point,
I
single thread?
did well, I was still doing some for a little bit, but once Shark Tank happened, I'm like, all right, I got to focus on this. And, I was so raw. I didn't know anything about apparel. I didn't know anything about e-commerce. I didn't, like, and so let me go back to answer your question of did my background help or hinder? I think it all helps, right? Like
Mhm.
me having, knowing the sports world and right. And having connections in the sports world, but also when agents reached out to me because their client would see it, like we had athletes wearing the robe and we would get images. And the crazy thing is I never had to pay for anything. Like they would do it and I would get the images from them because I'm a sports agent. I could speak their language, the agents, and they would get it to me. I didn't offer
Mhm.
money. I said, listen, we'll send it to them. We customize them for them. And I gotta tell you, they loved it, and that was super helpful. So that background and the negotiating always helps, right? And I'm trying to think, like, yeah, being a lawyer, it's always that never hurts you, right? And even on my exit, which we can talk about, like that was super helpful for me because I know how to creatively put a contract together that will work, hopefully for both parties. Like I don't want it to be if you're in a long term relationship with somebody, you don't want it to be, oh, I screwed them. I know some people feel that way currently, but I am a big, like, we're going to be in this together. Let's go for a win-win, you know?
Yeah, I'm with you very much. Trying to think about what the Cavs are gonna trade this summer and if it's future considerations, if they're gonna get screwed or be the ones who are screwing, but,
The
how
Cavs.
would you yeah. I think one of the things I appreciate about you and if, like, so much of what you did and built that company are things that, like, I tried or experimented with my brand. So, I think it was 2010 or 2011 because I was still living in Berkeley, and I remember being on the call with Shark Tank. It must have been 2011 because we started in 2010, and, they wanted us to go beyond the application, whatever the next step was, and I remember reading the contract, and at the time, it was something like, regardless, if you are on air Shark Tank gets, I think it was 3% operating income in perpetuity or 5% equity or both. I don't remember. And, at the time I was like, no chance. We don't have enough inventory. If we were to be on the air, we wouldn't be able to sell. Like, who cares? Because I didn't think about it from I think I was playing a smaller game. I know that they eventually changed those terms, which is hilarious. I think retroactively changed that term, but I like pulled myself out of that process.
Yeah.
And then in 2014 did a Kickstarter. Similarly, I think we were like 55K or something, which is like, cool. We hit our goal, but not enough to tell the bigger story. If you were to start another brand today, or you start DudeRobe again right now, what are the like? How would you even conceptualize starting the business, or is it, you're starting a company, you had a cool product idea, and you just like fell into two amazing marketing channels? Would you try to replicate that? Would you do something different? Like, I'm curious
Yeah.
what you can kind of abstract from your journey to bring to somebody else who's starting a company.
Yeah. It's such a good question. There's so many like thoughts. First of all, it's so much easier today than ever before. Like, now throw in AI. And I know I didn't even want to talk about AI because it's just everyone talks about AI. But if I look at it like this, I'm over 60, right? I'm using AI. I'm working on a new product. Like I was able to do this with AI. I was just back and forth, batting forth, back and forth ideas with this happened. I use Claude mostly, but that was with ChatGPT. And that I'm like, show it to me visually. And it created something that I can now send to manufacturers. It is insane to me. And I'm pressure testing so many like things about it. So I do think it's a lot easier today. And frankly, it was easier when I did than before, right? Like things just get easier, right? With all this access. Like when pre-internet, it was hard to do research. You had to go to the library, which is insane. Do they even exist still? Libraries? Is that a thing?
Our kids love the children's library near our house,
That's
and
it.
it's like one of
That's
the
it.
few things where I'm like, "All right, we haven't screwed up completely yet," but that is like
Right.
a destination they're excited by, so it
Good.
does.
Good. Let me give you a tip in terms of raising kids, since my kids are
Please.
now grown. We kidnapped my kids one night and like flew them to Florida and took them to Disney World. Like we didn't tell them where they were going.
Mm.
And my son was probably 6 and my daughter 3 or 7 and 4, something like that. And my son had been to Disney a bunch of times. My daughter had been a couple times, like my their grandparents like to take them, whatever. So my son is like laying on me. My wife's checking in, and I'm like, Zach, and he was like exhausted. It was like midnight or 11 something. Like, Zach, is this the greatest thing in the world? Isn't this your favorite place in the world? And he goes, yeah, it's for Dave and Buster's. So we could have just gone to Dave and Buster's. And so if you want to save some money, you could just do that.
Thank you. I love you.
Anyway, back to where were we? Where were
I don't
we?
even know.
Cut that out. You can edit that
No,
out.
if you were starting, so it's easier
Yeah.
now to start a brand, but, like, what are the yeah, I don't know.
Here's the things that I would, if I was like, didn't have a specific product, but I'm like, I want to start something and
Mm,
start a product based company. I would do something. I would not do apparel. I would not do something with sizes if I could help it. And I'll tell you how we ended up falling into not being knocked off, to be honest with you. But I would want something that's very demonstrable that
mm,
like you can easily show on TikTok or Meta slash Instagram, because I do think, doing that is critical. And I will say, in terms of what I learned, like it took us a while. Like we were not successful at first at advertising with Meta and
mm,
getting the creators right and having a website set up to like when you're on Shark Tank, we have this private Facebook group of like 700 plus of us, and the group's incredible. And so we ask each other a lot of questions. Everybody helps in there. I remember I didn't know anything about e-commerce, and they're talking about flows and this and that, and I'm like, all right, this is over my head. I'm too old. I don't understand. They're talking about mid funnel, top of funnel, and I'm like, was way confused. I'm like, I don't even care. And so at first, we were not converting partly because I didn't understand that stuff. Everything
mm,
I did was outsourced, but I always made sure we were profitable. And, our success, which was mild at first, other than Shark Tank, was like when we would do a deal on Touch of Modern, which is a very male skewing, I know,
mhm.
but it's a
I
very
know
male.
those founders. Yeah, cool.
Okay. So it was
Yeah,
we would sell out. Our website was anemic and we would do pretty well on Amazon.
mm,
So I knew like that was for like 2 years. And to be honest with you, like I should have stopped the business, but for seeing that success, I knew if we were able to figure out how to get in front of the right people, that there was demand for this because the reviews were also great and
nice.
people really liked the product. And frankly, like I would listen, like we would get reviews, and if it was said enough, we would take that into account. And we made the product lighter over time in
Mm,
weight because it was too heavy, especially for people in Florida, Texas,
mm.
California, Arizona, where we have a lot, that follows
A lot of dudes.
it's right, and it follows the population pattern of the country. That's where most people live. So anyway, I had to be cognizant of that. Um, but so I would do that. And what I would say is the funny thing is like people are like well-meaning people all doubted me, frankly. They didn't say it to my face. They said it to me after. They go, I can't believe you made this, you became successful with this. I really never thought you could do it. Whatever. Thankfully, they didn't tell me that, beforehand. But one of the well-meaning people was like, as soon as if you're successful, you're just going to get knocked off, right? And you're going to be out of business. And I'm like, all right, I'm not going to worry about that. I feel like we had a brand and we have first mover advantage, blah, blah, blah.
Mm,
And
mm,
so we got lucky because this thing was so annoying to make that nobody wanted to make it. Like finding a manufacturer to make it was not easy.
interesting.
So that helped
Yeah,
me.
you mentioned so I was actually curious because you mentioned this earlier, like it's hard to knock off. So is it literally like some process innovation or it's just like a huge flip to make this particular product? So like you
It's
can go
just
make a robe, huh?
they'd rather make a regular robe or a t-shirt or whatever than like, you know, it's
And-
two fabrics sewn together. So there's like, they need the sewing machines had to be wider, blah, blah, blah. I
Yeah.
didn't that was by luck, right? But thankfully it helped. And the other thing that has helped us in apparel, um, sizing is annoying from an inventory perspective, but from a return and exchange
Brutal.
perspective,
Yeah.
brutal. And so I've always, our exchanges and returns are really low. And so I thought it was because I'm a genius and because I made such a great product. But I had an epiphany a few years ago and I'm like, oh my God, it's not because I'm a genius, because clearly I'm not. It's because guys don't return, A, but B, add another layer of friction. We're so heavily gifted. Who wants to go to the person that gifted it to them and say, hey, that brand, do you have like the email, with the order and whatever so I can return it? So fortunately, that has worked to our advantage. Not that I'm looking for people to keep things they don't want. Fortunately, people love it. It's our reviews are one of our greatest assets. People
Mm,
are so, in my opinion, almost like oddly passionate about the
mm.
product. What a great gift. Favorite gift ever. Favorite piece of clothing. Like we're very lucky in that way.
I'm gonna tell my daughters for Father's Day this year.
By the way, speaking of which, we literally today dropped the a new product, the Bro Throw, a blanket free couch.
Is
It's such I love it. It is such
Howie,
a
I'm
great.
in. I'm in. I'm in. I'm in.
Hold on,
Just to be
hold on.
very clear, I'm not asking for a discount because friends don't ask friends for discounts. I had a lot of friends early on who were like, "Can I have a free watch?" And I was like, "You have a real job. You can buy our
The
watches."
Bro
So,
Throw,
okay,
man.
I'm in. All right, I'll be on the site next. I'm not doing it in real time because this is I respect you, but you take my money. I have a couple threads I want to pull on.
Yeah.
Why don't we say on that actually? How do you decide what is a worthwhile product that should fit under DudeRobe? Because obviously you can tinker and you know how to license it. Like you could go keep being creative, right? Which is obviously a through line in your career and do stuff for yourself or do stuff that's like you license or you're just experimenting
Yeah.
versus like what is the R&D that happens at DudeRobe? What is that process?
You know, so I'll say a couple of things in that regard. Anything I've spent a lot of time over the past year or so really trying to figure that out. Like anything we do has to make sense for us to do as a brand, right? And so the robe, and now in addition to the robe, we have the hoodie, like an over the head hoodie, pants and shorts that are all made of that same fabric, the annoying fabric to make, right? Like and they're great. The shorts, pants, and hoodie are awesome, but they're all the exact same fabric as the robe. So that all lives together and it all makes sense. But I don't want to be an apparel brand. I look at Dude Robe as we take boring old products that haven't really been innovated on and we make them better with a guy first attitude for guys today. That's the thought process. And further, I've been reading a bunch of like great books that I have found incredibly helpful. And one of them is Simon Sinek. I'm sure you know who he is. And he wrote this book, Start with Why.
Mhm.
And I took it to heart and I'm like, what is our why? Like, I know, yeah, we take boring old products, we make them better and with a guy first mentality, but that's not our why. And I realized, and I'm going to curse here, and I hope you don't mind. You could bleep it out if you want, but we make being home fucking awesome. So any product we do and any marketing we do has to kind of live up to that. So I can't just create a blanket, right? Like I showed you a blanket. It has a good name, but that's not enough. That I wouldn't just make a blanket. What we did was, I'll say a few things that we did. One, it's bigger than most throws. I don't know about you. You're tall. So your feet are hanging out it's down here, right? You have to make a choice. We made it bigger and wider for guys. It's the perfect middleweight fabric. It's got two pockets. One, like you're always rummaging for your phone or the remote, right? And we added a layer. So I wanted to do this for the robe. When I was struggling with the robe of trying to like tell the story of like what the benefits are. I wanted a robe that actually
Mm,
had physical benefits to it. And so I sourced the fabric that's got far infrared to it. Far infrared is known to like help you recover,
okay.
and it's and thermoregulating, and it's also antimicrobial, etc. And so it took me, I've been researching this for years, frankly, and talking to different far infrared fabric companies.
Mm,
Under Armour is a brand that uses far infrared fabric in some of their recovery stuff.
cool.
Various other, there are couches, there's this, there's that. It's big, it's a big thing. So we are this line that we're doing, starting with the bro throw, all has that fabric. So it's
Cool.
got recovery elements, it's got like thermoregulation, and it's designed for that. Now, from a testing standpoint, the manufacturer we went with doesn't have crazy testing like some other brands do,
Yeah.
but that's what. Oh, you found it.
I'm sharing it on I
Yeah.
never share on these, but anybody who's watching, they can see it. This is cool.
So I happen to love it. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but it's my favorite product we've done so far. Like I
Oh,
use it all the time.
that's great. Um, I'm gonna stop sharing, but I'm not gonna close the tab because I'm gonna be buying. I appreciate the like mission alignment, right? Like you have a high bar, it's gotta be amazing, and then it takes a while to do it, to like come up with the right product. And to your point before, like I've no doubt you'll get feedback and the version two at some point will be quote unquote better, but like not as defined by you, Howie, but it's defined by your customers. Can I keep going and like kind of bounce around on different
Yes,
topics
yes,
that
whatever you want.
okay, cool. Um, Something else you mentioned, it was funny, you talked about Touch of Modern. The founders have built another cool SaaS company, which I'll tell you about separately. But I remember we talked to Touch of Modern at Passport Shipping, my old shipping company, early days, which was very fun. And that's when I first met those guys. You mentioned Amazon. You obviously have the website. When you were thinking about the business, or if you think about the business today, how do you think about bringing your brand into different channels? How do you decide what channels to play in? Do you put more pressure on some channels because you're like, actually, we really want deep distribution, or is it? I don't know. Like, what goes through your mind as you think about the channel side of the business?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, like, it's been me, just me for so long, right? And then I ended up, as you know, exiting, but I still have tremendous upside, and I still run the business. To the naked eye, it's still me, right? But I have the support of a, let's call it, $1 billion apparel company that has its own legacy brands. It's a multi-generation family business. And the I say that for a couple of reasons. One, when I went with them, it's still me, right? But I can now tap on, I'm not dealing with the factory anymore. They have a production team that I deal with. But there are others, there are other resources that I have, but they were able to get my cost of goods down by over 50%. Think about what a game changer that is. But here's the thing. They started buying up their main business, their three brands under their parent brand that they started, are retail. They're 90+% retail. So they started buying up companies that look like me, e-commerce companies.
Mm,
I think they have 7, 8, 9 now or whatever. I think when we were first talking, they were like, and they do a tremendous hundreds of millions of dollars in Costco and Macy's and this and that. And that was a part of the allure for me, was that channel. And they were saying to me when they were buying me, like, oh, well, Costco, easy. Now, I don't think necessarily the DudeRobe brand, we can knock ourselves off and do something for Costco. I don't think the DudeRobe brand necessarily belongs in Costco, but whatever. So I said, like a year in, or 6 months in, I said to one of the owners, I'm like, what about, Costco? He's like, no, I like your model much better. We were so profitable for them in that first year with the e-commerce only model. So put retail aside for a second. Now let's talk about the other channels that are like e-commerce based channels.
just to tease out, like there might be a lot of brand recognition, but at the end of the day, from a pure profitability perspective, it is like not self-evident that scaling the business through those channels makes sense. Is kind of like saying I want to tease out.
Yeah, I mean, it's profitable, but you're how do I put this? There's a lot less, you're getting a lot less profit per sale.
Sure. Sure.
So it ties up cash for inventory
Yeah.
to feed that beast. And so yeah, it was sort of eye-opening the way they said that. tell me if the noise is going to bother you. So they're drilling above me, which they weren't
No,
supposed to.
it's fine.
I have so
You're
much.
good.
It's crazy what's going on in my house. Anyway, so like the channels that I've been looking at, right? Like our main channels is our website and Amazon. And it's probably like a 20 split website to Amazon. And, for a long time, it wasn't like our website was so anemic, but like COVID, like during that time, we figured some things out and COVID. So, it worked out well and we were able to take those lessons and keep going. So this year we've been focusing quite a bit on TikTok and TikTok Shop, and we're early in it still, but it looks like it's going to be a really good channel for us. And I do think not only the robe itself, which is what we're launching with, I think the UFC stuff will do well once we start seeding that. We have the UFC license. The Michigan stuff should do well with that, but the bro throw, I think, will do really well with that. And we launched, I don't know if you even know, we launched the She Robe for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And so that did great.
And is it great because it's a gifting product, or is it great because you're actually attracting it? Like, they
Both.
were already on the site as the gifter.
So yeah, we already had women, like, it's so funny. You think our customer is male, but often enough, the purchaser is female. Like I would say, and we're trying to smooth this out with these new products, but we were like an 80% November, December business from a revenue perspective.
Mm,
So heavily gifted. We have all these women in our, in our email system. We're like, and by the way, I've been thinking about doing a robe for women since I launched the brand, frankly.
sure.
And, we're not changing our voice. We're not changing anything, but women were asking for it. Now, plenty of women bought dude robes for themselves after seeing it for their husbands and whatever. But they were like our most frequent comment on our ads is, what about for women? I don't like floppy sleeves. I want a permanently attached belt. Over and over, we decided, and I did a survey of our email list before we were launching, and there were like 600 responses to the survey, and that influenced what we did, the colors we chose, like the features that we added that were important to
Cool.
them. And so, they were part of the journey.
Cool. I want to talk a little bit about your role and what's changed. And I want to talk a little bit about the sale. Within the role, like from a tactics perspective, when you were growing the business, like I'm curious if there were metrics that you were paying attention to that actually turned out not to be really critical, right? And ones that like you were missing that like got there. I'm gonna bring this towards cool.
Yeah.
How did the sale get done? Again, like not looking for state secrets, but really
Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to tease out how do you
Sure.
set a business up for a sale and whatnot. And then I'm curious as well, kind of post sale, what your role has become. You mentioned it's still you and you're still running the business, but anything that like has kind of changed in your learnings as you think about like where you were making those mistakes earlier, where you wish you'd doubled down on.
I think from a like, let's measurement standpoint, ROAS was the gold standard for us. And it probably shouldn't have been. Listen, like I said, was always able to be profitable. So I was very mindful of that. And if you want, we could talk about, like, there was one rough patch that we hit. Like, so much of it has been this, but there was one patch and it was right before the sale. And we could talk about that, which is why I sold in the first place. That was crazy. And it was iOS 14 was the culprit. So, I think ROAS, and I think trying to figure out attribution. I know there are a ton of companies out there, but attribution is so difficult, and really knowing what ROAS is. But here's what I'll tell you. Like when I
Mhm.
look at stuff, now what I look at to answer your question, we look much more. I always looked at MER as much as anything, even though we looked at ROAS. And I look at contribution margin now, which I
Yeah.
never did. I just always knew if we were profitable. But I didn't understand contribution margin at that time, or how to view that. And we're very mindful of that today. So that was kind of a change. We were never a big LTV company, even though LTV is great, because how many bathrobes does somebody need? Like we weren't set
How
up. So
many
it did,
showers do you have? That's
yeah,
a better
right.
question.
Right. It didn't matter to us. LTV was, it just wasn't like we were always acquiring new customers, which is not a great
Mhm.
recipe. So I finally, through the sale, am now able to do these other products that the goal is to both smooth out seasonality and add
Sure.
LTV. And it's bearing fruit. We're seeing it.
Um, okay, let's dovetail back into what you were just mentioning with the rough patch before sale. How
Yeah.
were you building the business? Like, you did Shark Tank. Did you have a bunch of investors? Were you actually like you were in control? You could do what you want. Like, what was that
It was
path?
just me. I funded this myself. Nobody from Shark Tank was interested, which was we were so early and I didn't have I mean, listen, the pitch was good. They liked the pitch, but I didn't have enough data to be able to give to them, right? Like if I
Yeah,
went to them
you had
now,
3 weeks of data.
right. I went to them now and they didn't get it. And nor did I have the best, like I said, we figured out how to best sell it in time. So we put
Sure.
it out there, not having every single answer. Like, you think you do the best you can, and then
Yeah,
you iterate. As like it was just me, and I had different agencies and people and whatever, but I was very lean, very, very lean. And so I
hmm,
was able to be profitable. My manufacturing at that point, a little bit after I started, I found these guys in Pakistan and I would literally speak to them almost every day. And I would be like, okay, we're a little low on this. Like they would make a few hundred and I would air everything in. So I was able to be super nimble. It
hmm,
cost me a little more money.
hmm.
But I was very nimble and able to like stay on top of, inventory and stuff like that the best I could.
How I had the exact same journey. I mean, our product was watches and those watch
Yeah.
components. And it was like, "Oh, you could be more efficient and put it on board." I was like, "Why? We'll pay
Yeah.
like 50% more so that I don't have to think about it until 3 days before, and then we can just get the product." So, very much hurt on the nimble. Alright, so
Yeah.
you're running the business, you're focused on profitability, you're lean, you're nimble.
And it's all my money, right? And so we're growing, but then, the problem with growth is you need more money. And so at a certain point, we were doing well, and I decided to do a equity crowdfunding campaign. So I went on Start Engine and we raised like less than I wanted, frankly. And it was like two, 225, $250,000. And in the meantime, what happened was, um, I had a consulting company. You know Harmon Brothers, right? They're the guys, they're one of the gold standards of like the funny ads that like e-commerce companies.
Yeah,
Ended up using Raindrop for my actual ads, but Harmon is one of those.
yeah,
I think I forget who their big ones were, but they were the ones you know.
okay.
And so, but they had a consulting side. And so we were seeing really good growth, right? Like I was growing like 100%. And we anticipated 100% growth going into 22. So we ordered 100% for 100% growth. Thankfully, I had done that equity crowdfunding campaign. It helped me get through, but iOS 14 happened, which for those people who don't know, that negatively, seriously negative impacted everybody that looked like us because
Yeah,
attribution was if it was always bad, it was a million times worse.
yeah.
And so instead of being on target for 100% up, we were 70% down. And I was flipping out. And at that time, the robe was being sold for, I think it was 98 or $99. And I never thought I could sell it for over $100. And I'm like, things were really bad. Like this was the summer of 22. I'm like, oh my God. And I've never had I'm going to share this with you. I've never had any sort of depression or
Mm,
negative feelings. I'm a very positive person. I just,
sure.
and I went into this funk. It was crazy. I'm like, oh my God, like I could owe, and I had an inventory crowdfunding thing. So I owed money for that. I'm like, I never really owe it. I was always able to pay it out of sales.
Mm,
So sales were down. I made a decision. I raised prices. We did a little bit of testing. I was going to do 128 or 130, whatever, raised it to $148. So 50%. I said, I may never sell another robe again, but if I do, I'm not going to lose money doing it because during that
mm,
time, my customer acquisition costs went up and my
sure.
average order value came down. So it was bad. And so it was at that time that I started looking for solutions. And I happened to speak to a cousin and he was working at the company that eventually bought me. They had bought him.
Mm,
And he's like, you really should talk to these guys. This is kind of like their thing when brands are, they want a deal. If you're like in a little bit of pain, whatever. And so I started talking to them. That was summer of 22. And so what happened was I ended up firing basically everybody. I got super lean and I went back to an agency that helped me scale in the first place. The owner of the agency is this really good guy who I really like. Thank you, Jefferson. How are you, buddy? And I'm like, listen, here's where we are. Like,
mm,
can you get us back to the path? Because you're charging $148 now. I don't know. So that's was August, and we started August, September. And I will tell you, we were down 70%.
mm,
Ended up finishing the year a little flat to up. It was really up like 5 to 10%. I don't remember exactly. We crushed it in Q4 with him. And the guys that were looking to buy me, I let them see the back end of my Shopify and they were watching like the crazy November and December. And they were like, wow.
mm,
And so we finalized the deal in early 23. And, it was a deal that gave me, if we succeeded, I have tremendous upside. It protected me in a downside, but it's a
sure.
win-win, right? And so,
Understood.
given the fact that they were now buying and able to get my cost of goods down 50%, blah, 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 we were able to lower prices. So it was so now to answer your question, for the first 2 years, I was still running everything, like all my agencies, whatever, and they had all these sister companies. So I was kind of helping them and some of them were using my agencies and whatever. In the past, let's call it year and a half. So we hit like a couple of profitability issues over the past like 2 years that are being rectified now and we're much more it's like we were super profitable. Like we grew my first year with them,
Mm,
we grew 200%. My next year with them, we grew 100 and we were super profitable that first year. The next year we grew 100%. We were not as profitable. And
mm,
so last year they tried a bunch of things to, to like right the ship, which weren't the right things. But now I'm back in charge, but I now have somebody else running like more of like the stuff that was draining me, which
mm,
was meeting with every agency. So this came from another book that I read, which is 10X is easier than 2X and Buy Back Your Time. Those two books I think
mm.
were critical for me, changed my thinking. Have you read either of those?
I'm writing them down.
Okay, I'm gonna send them to you. They so basically talked about like, I shouldn't be doing and I knew I shouldn't, but we didn't have the money. I was always like so careful with like paying money out. I need to for us to really grow as a brand and develop new products. Like my strength is the new products, it's the marketing, it's like all of that, and it's the relationships, the UFC,
Mm,
the
sure.
Michigan, like those things are that's that's my
Yeah.
strength, let's call it. And so all the other things of me, like I was like rewriting every email and and they were better, but it is not a good use of my time. I knew it wasn't. And it would drain me.
Yeah.
And so I was rewriting emails. I was talking to like a ton of agencies that I didn't need to. So now we have a layer in between where other people are focusing on those things and taking those meetings. And I have my calls with them and I hired a virtual assistant who's awesome. She really, really, she's been a big help in,
Mm,
like I said, like doing things that need to be done, but that suck my time and energy.
yeah. I mean,
I'm able to focus more.
it sounds like you're finding the leverage on the things that are important, but not bring you joy or zone of genius, whatever framing you want to
Yeah.
use.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So you can actually do the things that will bring the step level changes to the business.
Correct.
Um,
I
let
call
me,
them higher lever opportunities.
yeah, for sure. By the way, I'll check out those books. The one that I read probably every like 6 or 8 months is called Essentialism, and I do not honor the idea of essentialism, but it is a killer book.
Oh, good.
Craig
Okay.
McEwen. Yeah. It's
I'll look.
awesome.
I'll check that.
It's also like a really delightful listen too. It's a quick one.
Cool.
I know we have a couple minutes. I want to ask, and maybe like one more tactical. Let's say that you're the crowdfunding instead of raising 250, raise 750, so you could make it through the rough patch. and you were still thinking about how do I build my business to sell, knowing what you know. Are there any things that like a brand owner should be thinking about, right? Like if they're not going to IPO and they don't just want to cash flow forever, but they want to get some outcome, is there like, keep your eye on the prize that is truly like profitability and defensible product, or like what is the alchemy
Yeah.
that
That's
gets
a
you to a quick
shifting,
sale?
it's a good question. It's a shifting metric, to be honest with you, because for a while, if you remember, everyone was just chasing top line revenue at the
It was
expense of,
so fun. It
yeah,
was,
right. Easy,
yeah.
easy. And so I don't, I think there's a lot more eye on profitability. You want
Mm,
to, this is what I've been told by people who I was talking to in my Shark Tank community of people who have exited. You want to be at least $6 to $8 million to be taken seriously for a decent exit, right? And revenue. Whatever your, every industry is different from like from margin, operating margin, contribution margin, et
mhm,
cetera. So I can't really speak to that, but I think once you hit, I'll say 6 to 10 million is like you're showing you have enough demand and sustainability as a company to to get
mm,
to attract a certain level of investor. Like it would all be nice. My daughter works for a company called Road. Do you know them?
mhm,
Yeah. It would all be nice if we can start a company and 3 years later sell it for $1 billion.
yeah,
But that ain't real. I mean, it's real, but that's
yeah.
lightning in a bottle type stuff. And yeah, I think it's, I hate to say it. Listen, slow and steady is really the answer. Doesn't have to be, right?
True.
If you have a rocket ship product or whatever,
You can't bet on that though. So I
you
think the
can't
slow
bet
and
on it.
steady
You
is
can't
the
bet
right
on it.
approach.
If you have it, don't go slow and steady, like, like
I like it.
and
So
develop.
obviously the most important question, does Road need help with their email
Yeah,
segmentation?
exactly. Yeah. She always tells me to leave her alone with
Yeah.
when I ask her stuff like that.
She's like, give me some autographs and I'll consider it. Hi, I'm Aaron Schwartz, co-founder and co-CEO of Arita.ai. We build AI customer segmentation for some of Klaviyo's biggest brands like Oriana, Spanx, Caraway, Third Love, True Classic, Run Beauty, and on and on. Brands come to us to help find untapped revenue, improve their click rate, drive away mean bots, and a bunch more. You can learn more or get a free customer engagement audit at Arita.ai.